So now we're looking at the problems. Again, they're not that much harder. You just have to make sure that you do the operations carefully and don't make silly mistakes. You know how to multiply already, you know how to add, you know how to subtract. Just make sure you're doing everything in the right order and you should be okay. So I have a job that pays me $10.45 an hour. I work 14 and a half hours. And after that, I donate $30.25 to the food drive. How much money will I get after donating? You should really be thinking now, I make $10.45 for 1 hour. I worked 14.5 hours, and then I donated $30.25. How are these numbers going to relate to one another? Well, whenever you see a wage per hour and you see a number of hours, that should be an alarm in your head that you're doing a multiplication question. And then it tells you that this part comes off after, so we might as well figure out our wage, how much we got paid, and then subtract this later. So that would be my thinking when I'm making a plan on how to do this. I'm going to subtract that after. Wow, that is ugly writing. Okay, so first thing I have to do is do my multiplying. So for multiplying, I remember I don't need to line them up. I just have to write them out, and then I'll count the decimal places later. So 10.45 times 14.5. You can multiply it any way you want. I'll do it the way that most people in the class need to be doing it. 5 times 5 is 25. Carry the 2. 5 times 4 is 20. Plus 2 is 22. Carry the 2. 5 times 0 is 0. Plus 2 is 2. 5 times 1 is 5. So the next one. 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2 again. 4 times 4 is 16. Plus 2 is 18. That's an atrocious 8. Carry the 1. 4 times 0 is 0. Plus 1 is 1. 4 times 1 is 4. Now we have multiplied by 1. So this is a pretty straightforward one. 5, 4, 0, and 1. Then add 5. 2 plus 0 is 2. 2 plus 8 plus 5 is 15. Carry the 1. 5 plus 4 is 9, plus another 1, plus another 1 is 11. Carry the 1, that's a 5, and that's a 1. Now, I have a 1, a 5, a 1, a 5, a 2, and a 5. So now I have to figure out how many decimal places does that have. Using the Sweeney method. 1, 2, 3. That's 3 decimal places. I go over 1, 2, 3, right there. You could also look at it like almost 10 times almost 14 should be around 140. And this is 151 when you put that there. That's pretty close. So that would help you. If you put the decimal in the wrong spot, like over here, 15.1. No, 15 is nowhere near big enough. And if you put it way over here, you'd know that 15,152 is way too much. So that should help give you an idea whether your answer is reasonable. And remember, that is part of what we're focusing on. So you know how much money we earned. Now we have to do the subtraction for the charity. So we earned 151.525. And we have to subtract 30.25. Remember, with subtraction, we line up the decimals. Now, I'm left with a weird blank spot. That blank spot's a 0. So now I just subtract the way you normally would. 0 from 5 is going to leave me with 5. I can't make that 5 work, so I have to borrow 4. Put a 1 there, so that's 12. 12 take away 5 is 7. 4 take away 2 is 2. Decimal, 1 take away 0 is 1. 2, 1. So I have $121.27.5. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense, so So I'm going to expect you to round that to 2 decimals, because that's what we're used to doing with money. So that answer is actually going to be $121.20 something. Now, the weird thing with money for the most part is that usually you round it down, because if I don't have 28 cents. But again, I'm not going to add new rules. So if it's a 5, round up. 28. $121.28 will be the amount you have afterwards. One last thing to remember is I get to explain my plan out loud. I get to explain my thinking out loud for what I'm doing here. You don't usually have that opportunity during a test. During an assignment, of course, you can just come up and approach me. And even during a test, you can come and tell me, oh, I understand this, but I don't know how to write it down. And maybe we can hash that together. But if you're writing it down, you should write down your plan. You should write down what you're thinking, that I need to multiply these first and then subtract that after. Now, understand, I made a plan before I started doing any math, and you should try and do the same thing. So the next problem is the one that's a little bit harder. It involves some substitution. It involves some exponents. But it's the same problem you've seen a whole bunch of times, where there's some formula, d equals 12p squared plus 8p, where they're going to give you what p is. By that I mean me. So how far will it go if p is 2.6 centimeters? I should put an equals there. So 2.6 centimeters. We got to hammer this out. And we need to do it in a way where we're not using a calculator, which will be pretty impressive math if you think about it. So what's the first step? The first step is to substitute this in. So now it equals 12 times 2.6 squared plus 8 times 2.6. Again, even if you don't know how to do math, you should know how to do that part. And then at least I know this person understands formulas, this person understands substitution, and they interpreted the question properly. That's 3 things that you've proven already just by doing that, even if you can't do the operations. So now you ask yourself, what's the next operation? It's that 2.6 squared right here. This has to go first because it's an exponent. So off to the side, I'm going to do that first. 2.6 times 2.6. Again, you're all going to have different ways of doing this. I'm going to do it the way I normally do it now. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 20 is 120. 20 times 6 is 120. And 20 times 20 is 400. Boom. 6, 3, 5, 7, 4, 5, 6. 676 is what I'd get if I didn't have decimals. But I do have decimals. And they are right there and right there. So I have 2 of them. Put the decimal after 2. 1, 2. 6.76 is what it is when you get 2.6 squared. Now I ask myself, does that make sense? Well, 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. So do I have a number between 4 and 9? I do. 6.76 is kind of right smack dab in the middle. That makes sense. It seems reasonable. So I'm going to throw that in there as my next line. Equals 12 times 6.76 plus 8 times 2.6. Brackets, like all the operations inside brackets would be done. All the exponents are done. Now we're just left with multiplying and adding. We have a multiplying section here. We have a multiplying section here. We have an adding section in between them. We have to do the multiplying first, and we're supposed to do it in the order it appears from left to right. So we have 12 times 6.76. 12 times 6.76 is awkward to write like that. And some of you are going to find that that's kind of weird. What I would do, I wouldn't do it that way. I'd write it the other way around, where I write it 6.76 times 12. Understand this. You can reverse with multiplying, because 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. You're allowed to switch the order of them that way. You can't do that with dividing. If you had a dividing question, understand that 6 divided by 3 is not the same as 3 divided by 6. Order matters for division that way. It does not matter for multiplying. So, we will multiply. I'll do it the other way. This is kind of my way over here. I'll do it the other way. 2 times 6 is 12. Carry the 1. 2 times 7 is 14. Plus 1 is 15. Carry the 1. 12 plus 1 is 13. Leave a little blank spot. 1 times 6 is 6. 7, 6. Add them up. 2, 11. Carry the 1, 11. And carry the 1 and 8. So I get 8112. I have 2 decimals. 1, 2, 81.12. Does that answer seem reasonable is the next thing I should ask myself. It does, because let's say 6.76 is almost 7. 7 times 10 is 70. 7 times 2 is 14. That ends up being 84. 7 times 12 is 84. That's close to 81. So it would make sense. It's a little less than 84. That's what that is. Seems super reasonable. So I write that in my next line. 81.12 plus 8 times 2.6. I just leave that over there. So now I have only a little bit of multiplying left. 8 times 2.6. Again, I would write the number with 2 digits on top. Times 8. And just do it. 6 times 8, 48. Carry the 4. 16 plus 4 is 20. 208 is obviously not the right answer. There's a decimal I have to put somewhere. There's 1 here, so I got to put 1 there. 20.8. Does that make sense? Well, 8 times 3 would be 24. 8 times 2 would be 16. Somewhere in between 16 and 24 is 20. That makes a lot of sense. 81.12 plus 20.8. Now we just have our adding. So if I was trying to make the organization of this clear, this is a little jumbled. Obviously on a longer sheet of paper I could put this first, and then I could put this underneath it, and then I could put this underneath it, and it would be really clear. If you are always wondering what to do, label them. Put like star 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 1, and then put star 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 1 over here. Star 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 2. Star 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 2, to try and make it clear what's going on. This is not how I'd want your answer to look. But again, I don't have as much room on my page. I mean, I can move it around, but then you start to lose sight of the rest of the question. So I want to make clear that this is not what I want it to look like exactly. Anyways, back to our adding. I'm going to move this a tiny bit now, even though that I've said that, and just show the last bit of adding down here. 81.12 plus 20.8. 20.8. Remember, for adding, decimals have to line up because the place value actually matters. You're adding hundredths to hundredths, tenths to tenths, ones to ones, and tens to tens. There's a blank spot here I fill with a 0. 2 plus 0 is 2, 9, 1, and 10. Now the decimal just drops straight down. 101.92 seems fair. 80 plus 20 would be about 100. 101.92 is my final answer. That's how far it went. We just have to add units. In the question it said, I shoot distance out of a slingshot, where distance is the number of centimeters I pull back. How far will it go if I pull back 2.6 centimeters? Since it doesn't tell you the units for D, you might as well use the same units that are in the question. Centimeters. And that's that. So that's your math review. Hopefully you guys didn't find it too impossible and you're ready for a quiz tomorrow.